Gaming Bolt presents 15 video game practices that are plaguing gamers. You're probably looking at this list and thinking, practices plaguing video gamers? Aren't we being a bit too dramatic? And you would have a point, except many such practices that exist to make a buck from players aren't exactly beneficial in the long run. We're not just talking straightforward microtransactions either. Sometimes entire chunks of content are removed because someone, somewhere, signed a piece of paper. Okay, maybe we're being a bit dramatic. Regardless, let's take a look at the 15 video game practices that are plaguing gamers. Loot boxes. On their own, loot boxes seem harmless enough, especially if you can earn them in-game. Games like Overwatch only throw in cosmetics that have no effect on gameplay, while Destiny has cosmetics or low-light armor that can be obtained. The problem exists with the RNG. Would you rather spend money knowing what you're going to get, or rely on the roll of the dice every time? It also doesn't help that some games like Call of Duty Infinite Warfare offer supply drops with better weapons behind this RNG microtransaction nonsense. And yes, we're aware of salvage, but that's not the point. Level boosters. Level boosters are a very iffy subject. On one hand, for a game like World of Warcraft where you want to speed through most of the irrelevant content, they can be handy for immediately catching up. Plus, developers do offer one for free depending on the expansion. On the other hand, some games like Destiny allow you to level up fairly quickly because of the overall nature of the content. It's a weird line, but there's no denying that selling them for high prices like Destiny's Spark of Light for $29.99, which is the same price of a full expansion like Rise of Iron, is shady as hell. Lack of pre-launch reviews. Everyone relies on reviews to some extent or another. Heck, companies even offer bonuses for developers who can hit a certain Metacritic score. What if your game is full of problems, but you don't want critics to warn customers? Why, have no pre-launch reviews, of course, as was the case with Assassin's Creed Unity. It's also helpful for games with online capabilities like The Crew or Destiny, so players will only know of problems later. Lately, Bethesda also removed any chance of pre-launch reviews, and while Doom was still fantastic, it caused severe issues for Dishonored 2 on PC with its myriad of performance bugs. Pre-order exclusives. Many companies wouldn't mind motivating you to pre-order their games, hence the existence of exclusive pre-order content. Some of it is fairly straightforward. Pre-order Titanfall 2 and receive access to the free Angel City remake early. Others are more annoying, like the Iron Gallarhorn and the Galar Wing available from pre-ordering Destiny's Rise of Iron. And then there are those that offer entire maps with pre-ordering, like Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, and are essentially unavailable for a while if not claimed at launch. Sure, the industry needs to drive pre-orders, but why fracture the player base in the meantime? Timed DLC exclusives. These timed DLC deals, on the other hand, are just irritating. Sony may make a deal with Activision to release Call of Duty DLC 1 month later on Xbox One and PC, and alternatively, Microsoft has done the same with The Division's DLC. And why shouldn't Activision make the deal, right? But when you pick up a game and its season pass, you expect content to be available when expected, not delayed because you just happen to be on a different platform. Don't even get us started on Destiny, which has content that comes to Xbox One a full year after the PS4. To make matters even worse, the Taken King's exclusive content released in 2015 won't arrive until fall of 2017, thus making for a 2-year gap. Platform exclusivity deals. While platform-exclusive titles are arguably the reason why platforms like the PlayStation 1 and PS2 won the early console wars, it's still a pain to see a third-party title tied to a single console. This is less to do with my fanboy desires and more about wanting to play a game you find cool. In a way, it also seems like Capcom doesn't care about all the Street Fighter V fans for Xbox One. Unfortunately, money talks, and some games just stay exclusive. Shady early access titles. You take a risk when investing in an early access title. It even says so in the fine print. And while some games are excellent with their early access support, others tend to outright cheat people. Take the War Z, now called Infestation Survivor Series. It promised several features with its foundation release, and then banned negative reviews for pointing out the lack of said features. Of course, that's still not as bad as shady crowdfunded projects. Many have heard of the legend of Alex Jig Fundora, who raised $100,000 on Kickstarter for his prehistoric survival title, The Stomping Land. After collecting the money and allowing early access for an unfinished version of the game, he proceeded to disappear completely. Just poof, like he was never there. There's a reason why Kickstarter is a lot stricter when it comes to companies with projects, and Mr. Fundora is only one part. Lack of demos. Whenever you think, this game looks great, but it's expensive and I'd like to try it out first, you're probably reminiscing about the good old days of video game demos. Those were the days when demos were offered via official PlayStation Magazine, Computer Gaming World, and whatnot, thus allowing you to try out some big name releases before buying them. Nowadays, demos are far less common, and that's a shame. After all, Gravity Rush 2, Tales of Berseria, and Nier Automata had great demos that only built up their support even more. What's stopping other developers from doing the same? Graphical downgrades. We're not graphics junkies, at least some of us aren't, but it would be nice if a game's aesthetic in the beginning would match its eventual release. How many times have we seen games with fancy world-first trailers like Watch Dogs, The Division, and yes, even The Witcher 3, that didn't look as impressive when they were released? Again, it comes down to fun and overall gameplay, but it's still annoying when a game's looks are too good to be true from the start. Cheating. Cheating is a huge industry in its own right, with hackers working overtime to devise aimbots, wall hacks, and whatnot to bypass most popular multiplayer titles. Obviously, it's a problem for developers because it directly impacts the legitimate players whose experiences are being ruined by cheaters. Either way, pretty much everyone suffers, except for the cheat creators, of course. Lacklustre season passes. Once again, I don't have a problem if a developer wants to make an extra buck by selling additional content separate from the main game, unless it's quintessential to the original game or was part of it previously. However, when those season passes deliver subpar content, it becomes a problem. Destiny's Year 1 expansion delivered The Dark Below and House of Wolves, which were both below average. Then there's the Division Season Pass, which didn't expand on the main world, with the Underground or Survival, instead offering different side diversions, each with their own set of problems. Broken ports. If you're developing a game for multiple formats, then it stands to reason that they should work for all of those formats. After all, why promise a game for a specific platform if it doesn't work? We've come a long way since the days of Skyrim or Bayonetta on the PlayStation 3, but bad PC ports like Dishonored 2 still exist. Content removed and resold as DLC. Enjoyed Dead Rising 4 but annoyed by the ending? Don't worry, because the upcoming DLC will include the true ending. And then again, when it comes to content that should have been in the original game, that's still pretty tame. Insider reports indicate that Destiny was originally meant to include the base game, its first 2 expansions, and the Taken King. Naturally, these were split off and resold because money. Misleading promises about games. Not every game can fulfill our every desire, but it helps if developers didn't hype them to the moon. As if we haven't beaten the dead horse enough, Destiny was showcased as having a lot more than what eventually shipped, like, having a single-player experience, for instance. No Man's Sky was an odd entanglement of promises with multiplayer that was promised that one time, but then downplayed significantly until launch. It also didn't help that many of its features were a lot less epic than expected, though the Foundation update has apparently improved on that a lot. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at Gaming Vault, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.